Okay. Hello and welcome to another episode of Recovery from Politics podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Freeman. Today is Monday, November 20th, 2023. I know it's been a while. I was going to do a whole video on Rashida Tlaib and her whole censure and how that was kind of bullshit, especially the Democrats going along with it. It should be noted that Hakeem Jeffries didn't say shit in her defense. It was basically a who's who of the squad. Cori Bush got up, AOC got up, they all spoke about it. Rashida Tlaib gave what I felt was a very impassioned speech, regarding, how come Palestinian kids dying are not equal to Jewish children dying. It's one of those things. I don't know. Here's what I'll say about that, for sure. Regardless of whether or not you believe she is truly anti-Semitic or not, and I do not believe that. Of course, I'm willing to change my mind if evidence is presented, but I just haven't seen any. I think it is a very, very, very bad look for the United States Congress to focus on the only person of Palestinian descent in Congress for censure. Okay, why are we putting all the weight of this person's entire people and culture onto her shoulders? It's like, this person is not reacting the way we want her to. Like, I know what they want. They want her to say, I condemn everything that happens in Gaza by my own people, by Hamas, by everything, and I fully throw my support behind Israel. That's what Congress wanted. And that's, of course, what a lot of pro-Israeli people also want, right? They want her to capitulate. They want her to admit the failings of her own people and totally support the people who have been harmed by them. And I'm sitting here like, okay, well, she didn't do that, so you're going to censure her? I just think it's a very bad look. It's not like she has a strong base of Palestinian support. It's not like she's, a person of Cuban descent in Miami who's got just an incredible base of support around her and obviously represents the Cuban people. She is the only member of Congress this way, and I just find it very strange and a very bad look for the United States to focus solely on her. I think, of course, as well, a lot of these attacks only strengthen the individual. I think the Democrats, on one hand, were correct to go after Marjorie Taylor Greene when she first came into office. On the other hand, I thought that just made her more powerful. By the Democrats focusing on her, you made her a rock star. You have to understand there are elements of both parties' bases that pay attention to who gets attacked, right? AOC was singled out. AOC is now a star. Ilhan Omar has been singled out. Rashida Tlaib has been singled out. I don't think they're really going to lose. The only way they lose is if the Democrats turn on them the way they have Rashida Tlaib. Now, Ilhan Omar was, I believe, also censured, or if not censured, removed from her committee assignments based on, bullshit. It was merely retribution for what happened to Marjorie Taylor Greene. But she has since quieted down. She's come into the fold. I believe very quickly she realized her situation, and either she was threatened into compliance with the Democratic Party, and of course by that I do mean Nancy Pelosi, Hakeem Jeffries, and those individuals, or she just saw the way the wind was blowing and was like, okay, fine, I'll go along to get along, kind of a deal. I'll be quiet. I'll vote for what you want. Leave me alone. Whereas Rashida Tlaib does not seem to be doing that. And I do think it was a huge mistake for the Democrats to cede this ground. I believe over 20 Democrats voted in favor of this censure. Oh, apologies. We have a guest. Oh, this is Shy. Hello, Shy. This is the internet. Anyway. Over 20 Democrats voted in favor to censure Rashida Tlaib, which I think was a huge mistake. I think they should have seen it for what it was, because it's not like the Republicans were arguing in good faith, okay? They just weren't. Same thing with Ilhan Omar. They took her statements, they warped it to fit their narrative, and then they sold it. And the Democrats who were going along with it like, well, yeah, this is correct. It's like, no, you're just you're being duped by the dumbest group of Republicans I've ever seen, and that's really saying something. So to me, it doesn't look like Democrats standing on principle. Oh, we're defending Israel, and we're fighting against anti-Semitism. No, it instead to me just looks like they're idiots. The true principled stand would have been, hey, we have free speech. We are a Congress about having differing ideas. We are not into groupthink. We do not want that. And also just accept the reality of the situation. She is one person in Congress by herself. How much power does she affect? She does not affect any. She is a single House member who is not a rock star. She's not AOC. She doesn't command people the way AOC does on social media. So it's like she has no power. She is a single individual. Why are you focusing on her? Why are you doing this? And the only thing you can come to think of is, the pro-Israel lobby is very strong in the United States for a reason. I still stand by Ilhan Omar was not incorrect when she said it's all about the Benjamins. She just said it badly, the wording was bad. She could have easily come out and said, well, there are private interests who support candidates financially, and if you don't go along with them, they're going to support your primary challenge. And right now, guess what's happening? Rashida Tlaib is probably going to be facing a primary challenge, which is the Democratic response to this, which I think is wrong. I think Hakeem Jeffries should have gotten up and been like, go ahead and disagree with her if you want. That's fine. I think that's totally fair. But just be like, look, I know this woman. I work with this woman. I know in her heart she's not anti-Semitic. She has a different belief than I do. I disagree with her statements. This is America. This is not what we do. Some people could say censure doesn't mean anything, but I think it does weaken her, and it weakens the Democrats to go along with bad faith arguments by Republicans. But regardless of that, I really wanted to get into that. And of course, we had other things happening too. But right now, there's this insane fear on the left regarding Biden and his reelection chances. And I don't want to say it's insane because it's not real. I believe it's very real. I believe Joe Biden and the Democrats are walking into a 2024 defeat. And I don't even think the Republicans are going to have to pull any shenanigans for this. I think it's going to just be a blatant depression of the vote for Democrats. I think Democratic voters, especially the youth vote, which I'll get to, are basically going to sit at home and be like, why the fuck would we vote for this guy? This is ridiculous. This guy is just not doing the things we want. Not only that, he's dismissing everything we want. Yeah, sure, you can blame us for not voting the lesser evil, but as far as they're concerned, what the heck, But the insanity is how they're, blaming the left. They're blaming the youth, and basically they're blaming. They're already setting up the potentials. So here we go. There are 3 reasons why Joe Biden's going to lose, and this is per the crazies. This is, and there are a lot of centrists who say these things. So I also lump them in with crazy. I think they're denying reality. The number one boogeyman of 2024 is TikTok, right? There are numerous centrists, center-right, bulwark types, but basically they are believing that TikTok is the one that is driving all this anti-Joe Biden, anti-Israel sentiment, especially in the youth. They talk about the huge numbers that TikTok has. They talk about the algorithm sending TikTok all over the place and sending sending young people over. If you go on to TikTok, you see all this pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas, pro-Bin Laden thing. There was a weird Bin Laden thing that went viral a while ago, and they're blaming TikTok for it there with no evidence whatsoever. And some of them will even couch that. There's a guy, Professor Galloway, was on a podcast with Tim Miller from the Bulwark over this weekend, just yesterday, I believe it was posted. And even he says, there's no concrete evidence that China is directing all this stuff, but he just feels that it's, they would be stupid not to. I mean, they control TikTok. And this is another one of those fallacies that people have, because it's just, we're projecting, right? We're projecting. Even Professor Galloway kind of admits it. He doesn't use the word projecting, but he even says, we would do it. That's why I think China's doing it. He does make that equivocation, but he doesn't he doesn't go a step further and maybe look inward and be a little introspective and be like, am I projecting? Is it just that because America has a history of doing shit like this and fucking with other people's elections and trying to, stir up dissent where possibly there wasn't any before because we didn't like their candidates? Is it feasible that China's doing it? Yes, of course. But is it projection that, yes, they are? Because there's no evidence that they are. Congress likes to drag TikTok in front, and I believe there's this very strong, ridiculous anti-Chinese sentiment. There's this weird perception that China's out to get us. And if China was out to get us, they're doing it in a really bad way. I really don't believe it. China is very aggressive when it comes to their own borders and their own sovereignty. That's about it. They are not trying to push communism. They don't even like their own neighbors, okay? China and Vietnam are on the outs. China is, very aggressive towards Taiwan, but when it comes to North Korea, they don't even like North Korea. They hate North Korea. They don't really care for them. They work with a shit ton of anti-communist states, okay? People are projecting because they work with Russia, and it's like, well, of course they're working with Russia. Russia pays them money. I see transactional, nothing else. Everyone points to the amount of money that they're pouring into Africa, and oh, look, they're trying to invest in Africa and get African nations to turn against us. Yes, but they're not turning them communist. This is a huge difference between China and the Soviet Union that I think a lot of Americans really haven't grasped with or understood. The reason why there was the Red Scare was because Stalin was very much trying to push communism around the world. He truly felt, and a lot of the Soviet Union's big thinkers at the time truly felt that capitalism and any capitalist nation was inherently the great evil and it was coming to destroy them. So the only defense against that would be to spread communism. So that's why the Soviet Union went the way they did and were constantly doing that. And then the United States countered that with isolation, with containment. Let's keep them from spreading communism. Let's keep them within their own borders and they will collapse on their own. And it is a viable strategy. When you isolate a nation, eventually they'll collapse. It's just a matter of time. We've been doing it to Venezuela for years. We're just waiting for that to happen. We've been doing it to Iran for a while. We're waiting for that to happen. We are currently doing it to Russia. Anyone we don't like, the United States isolates and just waits for nature to take its course. This, of course, takes decades, and in the meantime, tends to hurt millions of civilians, which is why I'm against that. But China's not that. China is trying to buy influence. I won't deny that. And they are extremely aggressive with their own borders, of course, but I don't see them being any more or less aggressive than the United States would be. Like, if Hawaii all of a sudden declared its independence tomorrow and said, you know what, this being a state of the union thing is not working for us, we want to be our own independent nation, the United States would fight tooth and nail to keep them in the union. Like, there's just no getting around that. We would fight with it more than China is over Taiwan. We would go balls to the wall over it. And of course, Taiwan has always been weird, but at the same time, the United States is responsible for Taiwan. Like, we're responsible for them being who they are. The Chinese government that got kicked out by Mao went to Taiwan, and the United States immediately jumped in and protected them, kept them safe. And, while Mao was doing his thing over in China, we built this pro-capitalist democratic nation. I'm all in favor of democracy. Personally, I think Taiwan should be left alone. But at the same time, I do understand kind of where China is coming from on this. And I also believe that there's room to negotiate, not for Taiwan. Again, Taiwan deserves, self-determination. I'm not suggesting that we give China Taiwan or anything like that. But I am suggesting that the United States doesn't have to go at it as hard as we are. We are treating China the way we did the Soviet Union. Isolation, containment, constantly fighting them tooth and nail when China has not demonstrated the same capabilities that the Soviet Union did. China isn't even really all that communist. China has allowed American investors in. If you, an American, can right now go onto the stock market and invest indirectly into China. That was something that just was not possible during the Soviet Union era. So I think China is a big boogeyman, and I think TikTok is the enemy to attack right now because they are the largest social media platform. They definitely have the youth right now. If you're under 30, chances are you are on TikTok like crazy. I have an account. I've been staying away from it. I don't like videos, believe it or not. If I was watching this, I'd have it on in the background while I'm doing something else because I prefer to listen. But that's me. I'm older. I acknowledge that, and it's okay. Another thing I have a problem with this TikTok thing, though, is that, they're suggesting that TikTok is the reason why Joe Biden's doing badly, because it's, constantly beating the drum that he's old and that he's out of touch with the youth and everything else. And it just reminds me a lot. Remember when Columbine first happened and everyone was scrambling for like, how the hell could this happen? And then when more shootings happened, everybody's still scrambling, looking for reasons. And ultimately, the conservatives, the right, basically landed on the reason this is all happening. There's no prayer in schools, video games, and, music. Either death metal, heavy metal, or rap is the cause of school shootings. And I'm like, no. Okay, there are millions, potentially billions of people who listen to rap, who play video games, who do not pray in schools, and they don't go out and shoot people. I mean, it's just a boogeyman. Like, seriously, when it comes to TikTok, do I believe social media can be a weapon and it can be weaponized? Yes, but without any evidence. And that's my primary, complaint with this. There's no evidence that TikTok's doing anything. Here's what I believe. An algorithm on all social media sites, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, all of them, they are all designed to generate engagement. The number one way to generate engagement is to piss you off, which is why, a lot of it's referred to as doom scrolling. It's just bad news. It's things that make you angry because you're more likely to click it if it pisses you off, right? This is known, or should be known. Well, TikTok is just doing that. So when you have an algorithm that's based on that, you have a for-profit system that's driven by that. Like, there's no incentive not to promote something that's going viral. Right? Like, I thought it was really dumb. Bin Laden had this open letter to the United States where apparently, and I have not read it, I could give a fuck. He's a murdering psychopath, but that's me. But he goes ahead and he writes this thing and he puts it out, and I believe The Guardian originally posted it years ago. It just went viral on TikTok. And The Guardian was like, we need to take it down. And I'm like, okay. On one hand, I agree. Yes, take it down, because I am not a free speech absolutist. I do not believe that free speech is all it's cracked up to be. I mean, quite frankly, I'm sorry. I don't buy this. I do not. Hate speech should be taken down. I don't give a fuck about your hate speech rights. It can go in the trash. Guardian goes ahead, removes that, and then everybody's all pissed off at the Guardian right now. But TikTok's being blamed for this, and I'm like, it's not TikTok. If a million people click a thing, the algorithm's designed to promote that thing. It's like, oh, this thing has generated, engagement. Therefore, I will multiply the engagement. Like, it doesn't matter what the video is of. It does do that. I do believe that youth is playing a role here, and hear me out on this. I posted this on my own social media, so if you've heard this before, it's because I said that. But the youth of America are being completely ignored, and a lot of older people, boomers in general, even members of my own generation and just slightly younger, do not understand where all of this is coming from. And I'm trying to explain to them. This is a generation of kids who, from day one, they went into school in kindergarten, were taught what to do during a mass shooter drill. They lived under constant threat that at any moment, for no reason at all, a madman can simply walk into their school and end their life. That has been their life for over, the 13 plus years they have been in school. They have been trained to look for exits everywhere they go. They have been living in a world where almost every week during the year, there is another school shooting. and they can find out about it. And social media has also magnified this. So there's no chances that your average kid wasn't on social media seeing someone in America being blown to bits by a lunatic. This is the world they live in, under constant threat, thinking at any moment the hand of God could just touch them and kill their friends and kill their family right in front of them, maybe kill them. So is it possible that TikTok's to blame, or is it possible that the youth of this country looks at what's going on in Gaza, sees the apartheid going on, and yes, I will use that word. Gaza is an apartheid state. Israel does not have equal citizenship for everyone. Gazans are second-class citizens at best. They are being oppressed. At any moment, an Israeli Defense Force can go in and kill them. There's a video out right now of an Israeli Defense Force member going into a mosque, throwing a flashbang for shits and giggles. They were doing nothing wrong, they were praying. Okay? Settlers in Israel, radical settlers, can simply go into Gaza, go into the West Bank, seize land, and then the IDF will back them. They can kill families, they can displace families at any moment, and just take it. It is modern day what happened to the Native Americans here, okay? They can just go there, and they have the full backing of the Israeli government to do it. This administration, the Netanyahu administration, should be noted, is extremely unpopular, and most Israelis are against the settler thing. They believe in the two-state solution. They want Netanyahu out of there, but make no mistake, their government is doing this and is backing this and does not give two shits about the Palestinian people. So is it possible that the youth of America, having lived under the threat that at any moment could be their last because their government is letting it happen, is it possible they look over at Palestine and see solidarity with these people and be like, yeah, I know what that feels like. It fucking sucks. So possibly they have a little more empathy towards them. They have sympathy. They have skin in the game. They don't see Palestinians as a foreign, body. They see a kinship with them. Small kinship, granted, but a kinship nonetheless. Somebody can kill you, and either through inaction or action, the government is backing that play. I don't think it's TikTok. I think the older generations, Democrats who are really, really strung up about Joe Biden, are looking at the younger generation, and they simply don't understand because they did not grow up in that environment. They don't get it. They really don't. So that's my spiel on TikTok. The next big thing that we have going on that the Dems are blaming for why Joe Biden's going to lose are these third-party candidates. You have Kennedy Jr., Cornel West, Dean Phillips are the most prominent. You have Jill Stein has decided to ramp up again for the Green Party. You can argue whether or not some of them are Russian plants. Jill Stein has the heftiest. Cornel West, John Kennedy, and Jill Stein all went to Harvard, which really makes you question whether or not we're getting our best and brightest from them. And, a lot of people are pointing at this and they're saying, oh, Dean Phillips is primarying Joe Biden and it's going to ruin him and it's going to make him awful and everything else. And, no, I'm sorry. This is the same argument that people had with Ralph Nader's, the reason that, Gore lost Florida. This is not true. It was proven that, sorry, Bush won Florida. There was an audit afterwards. I believe it was the New York Times went down to Florida, and with their own money, they went and hand counted each one, giving Gore every benefit of every doubt of every hanging Chad. Bush still won. It sucks, and I think the Supreme Court was wrong to intervene, but he won that election. The Electoral College sucks. Still think that should be obliterated, and we can argue about that another time, but he lost. The real problem here is not third-party candidates, but they're going to use them as boogeymen. Dean Phillips right now is being set up. I guarantee you he will be blamed. Cornel West will be blamed if he is on the ballot come November 2024, as will Kennedy Jr. They will be blamed. Although Polls show that Kennedy Jr. is drawing more from Trump's base than Biden's, so we really don't know. Cornel West obviously is going to be drawing from the left because he is of the left. I don't think personally they should be running. I've come around on a few things lately. I used to believe in proportional representation, and perhaps I still do, at least in the United States Senate or somewhere else. We could test it out. But lately, I'm starting to come around to the idea that the two-party system is actually good. Please hear me out. So the reason I've come around on this is we have had a huge rise in Nazis. Right. And we have a huge rise in anti-Semitism and everything else. And my own experience in the DSA here in my local chapter in Alabama, where there are pro-Hamas. OK, they're pro-terrorist. OK, they don't see them as terrorists. They see them as freedom fighters. And they believe that Israelis, there's no such thing as a private citizen who has nothing to do with his government, that they're all complicit and therefore are totally OK targets. OK. So the two-party system, the only thing it does well is it tamps down on the extremes. And the extremes are Nazis for the right and the pro-Hamas terrorist people on the left. Right now is our big issue. Well, if you look inside the parties, the Republicans may use code words to kind of wink and nudge that no, they're okay with Nazis voting for them. But there are no out-and-out Nazis in Congress, right? We can suspect, we can think, we can guess on who's really a secret closeted Nazi, but there's no Nazi party in the United States Congress right now. There's no pro-terrorism party. There's no, anti-colonialism party, whatever the hell we'd want to call it. Those people don't exist, okay? If they are in Congress, they have to keep quiet. They are in the shadows. They are in the closet. They cannot come out. If they come out, they would be destroyed. Period. They would be removed immediately. So the two-party system tamps down on that. And if you think about things like, I used to think proportional representation was a good idea. Hypothetically, if we just eliminated the states in it and said we have 100 senators for 100%, you get 1% of the vote, your party's represented in the Senate. And I used to think that was balanced. And I thought that would free up the parties, because then the Democrats and the Republicans could be who they want to be, center right, center left. And then you would have a conservative party, and you would have a liberal party. And hell, you might have a communist party, or you might have the Nazi party, right? You could have those. But then I started thinking about it, but that kind of lends legitimacy to it, doesn't it? Because then you wouldn't have the hidden kind of maybe sort of. No, you would, I guarantee you, there would be a few United States senators from the U.S. Nazi Party. Okay, that would just be. If a vote was held today and it said instead of voting for a candidate, you just had to vote for what party you aligned with. What are we talking? 2-3%? Hell, 1%. But now you have a Nazi. An out, open Nazi in the Senate. And what if there's a vote that's like 50-50, 49-49, right? And that's the Nazi is the one who's holding out, who's like, I don't know who's going to vote. Now you would have people trying to make a coalition with a Nazi, which also lends them credibility. So I don't know if that's the way to go. I mean, I think our current system's still broken, but the two-party system of it, I kind of like. I'm okay with that. Maybe we could go to ranked choice voting, which is a little more complicated, but also it has that control ability, because people tend to, when on their second choice, go more conservative than their explicit. With their first choice, in ranked choice voting, usually what ends up happening is your first vote is for the crazy, right? You're like, fuck yeah, Marjorie Taylor Greene, ha ha ha. But then your second vote is, well, if I can't have her, okay, I guess I'll have Mitt Romney. That's what tends to happen in countries that have proportional representation, is people's first choice is the radical, but their second choice tends to be the moderate. So as long as the radical doesn't get over 50% immediately and win, you tend to get more moderates, which is good for, government, because radicals tend to fuck things up. Go see the Republican Party in the House right now. They can't pass a government at all. They can't pass a legislation without problems because they've got a very small minority and 20 grenade throwers at any point who could blow it all up with a simple, I challenge the speaker. Excuse me. Caffeine. Very nice. So, I don't like proportional representation anymore. Ranked choice voting sounds like a good fix. Because then you'd have all those people, hypothetically, for these third-party candidates. Maybe they're radical and they're like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to vote Green Party Jill Stein, or I'm going to vote Cornel West, or I'm going to go ahead and vote Joe Kennedy. But if I can't have them, yeah, okay, I'll go Biden. And even in the Republican primary, yeah, a lot of people's first vote's going to be Trump. But Trump's never in the primary, when there's this many candidates, gotten over 50%. He's banking on a large pool of other assholes not being able to crack 20%, and then he can walk in with his 35% of the Republican base and win. Well, okay, if we used ranked choice voting on them, yeah, that 35% might say Trump, but their second vote would be who? I mean, yeah, you could argue DeSantis, but right now the hot runner is Nikki Haley. Maybe even Chris Christie would get a vote. Who knows? But the likelihood of Trump would have been less. And would Hillary have won in 2016? Would Joe Biden have won in 2020? If you go ahead and do that. So I think the fix there is ranked choice voting. But this third party candidate thing, the reason I don't like it, and I think the Democrats are just setting themselves up for failure, is that when there are so many third-party candidates and people challenging your president, that should tell you something like, this guy obviously has weaknesses. And if I'm a Democratic strategist, I think this is great. I really do. This is fantastic news. You're telling me Kennedy Jr. is getting numbers. Who are his supporters? Why do they support him? Cornel West is getting voters. Okay, great. Why do they support him? You have a template for all your weaknesses in your candidate, and you've got a year to shore those up. I remember when Arnold Schwarzenegger was running for re-election in California. He was already governor, but the Democrats had a really rough time. I remember the Democratic candidate, or maybe one of his higher-up surrogates, but one of them was complaining that every time they said something about Schwarzenegger at the time, he would then pass a bill or do an executive order of some kind addressing that weakness. So it's like, we'd attack him on schools, and then he would pass a school thing and just like totally deflate their attack. Now, I don't know if this would work for Biden, but I think it's worth looking at, right? If Kennedy is getting votes for some reason, if West is getting votes, if Phillips is getting votes, look at where your candidate is weak and maybe shore it up. Maybe instead of, dismissing the youth vote and just be like, fucking TikTok is brainwashing them, this is all bullshit. Rather, instead of doing that, listen to them. Address their concerns. Instead of calling out Rashida Tlaib and the squad during a mock State of the Union speech, why don't you point out we have differences, we're working together to resolve them? I think this is a huge mistake by Biden, going so hard on certain things and just refusing it. The Democrats are having blinders on to the situation in front of them. There are all these third-party candidates because Joe Biden has great weaknesses. Outside of Dean Phillips, who is basically running as Joe Biden but younger, like, his only complaint is the age thing. Okay, screw off. The rest of them have honest-to-God policy differences between him. And if they're gaining votes, I think it's incumbent on President Biden and his staff to see those weaknesses and be like, okay, guys, we've got a whole year here. Let's work to correct it. But who am I? I'm just a guy sitting at home. The third thing that the Democrats are blaming on all of this is just flat out ageism. They're like, these people just hate old people. That's why Biden's losing. And it's so stupid because Trump's not getting the same hate. Okay. Trump is only a couple years younger than Biden. And if you asked me in a head-to-head comparison, Trump obviously looks like he's lost marbles. Okay. But whatever. Let's throw that aside. this is why I don't buy the ageism thing. The media is making a huge deal out of it because historically he is old for the presidency, and the presidency does age. But I believe this is cover for something else. The reason nobody cares about Trump is that, one, he's not president. Okay, when he becomes president, it will be an issue. But also, ageism will come up if Trump nominates as his vice president a similarly old fucker. Okay, if he picks Rudy Giuliani as his running mate, then ageism is going to start affecting him more than Joe Biden. I believe the ageism argument is cover because it's really a referendum on the vice president. Okay, Biden has more or less had a steady hand on things. I disagree with him vehemently on a lot. I think a lot of things that people are saying are his foreign policy wins are losses or turning into losses very quickly in front of him. But really, at the end of the day, this is a referendum on Kamala Harris. She is not who people want as president. No one wants her as president. No one. Anybody saying, oh, she'd be a great president, are the same people thinking Hillary would have been a great president. And that Hillary, was fantastic too. I think this is the main reason why Biden needs to dump her. I'm sorry. Ageism, I don't believe it's really the case. I really don't. People do look at Biden and say, wow, he looks old. Nobody gives a fuck. Okay? The problem is, if he dies, we get Harris. And no one thinks Kamala Harris is up to the task. There's too much going on now. Okay? You've got Republicans in the House, ineffective Democrats in the Senate, a judiciary that's totally against you. Okay? They're going to rule against everything you do. You have Ukraine with Putin, and you have what's going on right now in Israel, and God knows what's going to come up in the future. Right now, everyone's predicting China's going to make a move on Taiwan, especially if Trump gets elected. So you need somebody who can go up against those people. Biden, he's done the best with what he's had so far. Obviously, I would have made different choices, but whatever. You can give him the benefit of the doubt. Give him the benefit of the doubt, say he's done an okay job. No one thinks Harris is up to this. Okay. The same way nobody thought Hillary was up to it. I'm sorry. It's just true. Hillary at no point swayed me that she could deal with these issues. Okay. Maybe it is misogyny on my part, or maybe it's misogyny on the world's part. Okay. Putin is probably a huge bigot. Okay. And he's going to look at Kamala Harris and immediately dismiss her. Immediately. Like, I have no doubt. He would just, no. Xi, I don't know. I don't know enough about Xi. Netanyahu? Yeah, no, he definitely seems like the type. And certain other leaders, It's like, could Harris keep together NATO? Could Harris keep Netanyahu from just blowing the shit out of Palestinians right now? Could Harris defend Taiwan? She might. Or perhaps because of her position. I mean, think of it from this point of view. This was something I pointed out a lot during the Obama administration. A lot of people will point and say that Obama was the deporter in chief because he deported more people at the time than anyone else. And Biden's, going along that same trajectory. But at the time, Biden was the deporter in chief. And Biden was also drone striking like nobody's fucking business over in the Middle East, right? Like, he took what Bush started and put it on fucking roids. And a lot of people felt betrayed by Obama for doing that because we thought by electing him, he would be the best of us, not this part, right? And I tried to explain, I was like, look, I truly believe if Obama had his way, a magic wand, and he was a king, he would not be doing these things. I believe he's doing these things because the position he is in. He is the first Black American president. He has to deport more people than anyone else. He cannot, under any circumstances, be seen as even being slightly lenient on the border. He probably felt he has to do all those drone strikes, right? Because he, as the first black American president with a funny Islamic last name, cannot be seen as going weak on terrorism. Can't. Right? Like, that's the position he was in. I believe that position he was put in forced his hand on these issues to make him go against what I believe is his character. Now, is that a character weakness on his part to not rise above? Perhaps. That's a different discussion. Do we think Harris is of that character that she could rise above? Or do you think, like I think with Hillary, I think the reason Hillary was always such a hawk was because as a woman, the first woman who really had a chance at the White House, she had to be a hawk. She couldn't be seen as the dove, right? Because of that bullshit misogyny. She had to be as tough as she could to prove that she had the balls to be president. Harris could be put in the same situation. There is nothing in her history to suggest that she has the character to overcome that she will fall into the same trap that Obama did, that possibly Hillary did. Honestly, Hillary's got no history of going against it. She often brags about it, and since she was never president, we don't have a direct comparison, so I don't know if she's playing to the crowd when she says, yeah, I would have bombed the fuck out of them, or I wish Obama would have done more, you know, or if she really truly would have done that, like, you don't know. But Harris also is stuck in that position of, is she or isn't she? There's a possibility, if Biden, God forbid, drops dead tomorrow, Harris gets in and tries to overcompensate due to her position. She would be in a weakened position. The president was not popular. Okay, he's just not. Shit is going on around the world. She is the first woman of color to be president, also with a funny name. There is a potential there that we could be setting her up for failure simply because of that. We could set her up to where she goes and overdoes it on everything. And it's no fault of hers. It's the situation she's put into. She will feel cornered. A lot of her advisors, okay. John F. Kennedy, the President Kennedy, historically is noted as having just massive balls when it comes to the Cuban Missile Crisis. Every single advisor that walked into the White House when they found missiles in Cuba were like, let's fucking invade right now. Let's bomb the fuck out of them. We need to go in right now. Like, every single advisor, the entire Joint Chiefs, the entire intelligence apparatus, every political advisor in the world was like, fuck yes, let's do it. Kennedy was the only man in the room to say, no, we are not going to war today. There are plenty of examples of lesser presidents who would have capitulated to that. Bush Jr. being senior amongst them because he is the idiot who's like, I just listen to the boots on the ground, you know, the generals, they're the ones. You know, he always passed the buck to the generals whenever Iraq was going to hell. Huge character flaw on his. Fuck you, the buck stops with you. Period. Don't pull this, I'm just doing what the general said. That's an asshole who, if he were in office during the Cuban Missile Crisis, would have started World War III. Period. We do not want that. Kamala Harris has not demonstrated it. Granted, Kennedy never did either. We don't know until that person's in office. Kennedy had his own issues. He was the first Catholic president. A lot of people felt like, oh, he's just going to do what the Pope says. Yeah, whatever. It is a thing that you can't test until the person's there. I'm just pointing out that absolutely no one believes Kamala Harris is the person to rise above. If she became president tomorrow, got into office, and her entire advisory panel, which is going to be mostly Biden holdovers, right? And they all say, no, what you really need to do is just bear hug Bibi to the end. You need to support Israel, no matter what. And then Netanyahu starts a war with Lebanon tomorrow, the next day. What's she going to do if the whole room is against her? And this is really the true mark of a presidency as far as I'm concerned. Kennedy was exemplary for it. There were other times in history as well. Lincoln also had that same situation where the entire room was against him. It was like, dude, you should really just let the South go, or maybe you should give up on the 14th Amendments. The 13th and 14th Amendments, maybe not push for that, maybe wait, let's kick it down the can. And he was the one guy in the room saying, fuck you, no, we're doing this. Kennedy, that's a very clear thing. Everybody else puts FDR on a pedestal, or Eisenhower, or a few others. And yeah, those guys were great in moments. They never had to deal with a situation where they were the only person in the room fighting against all the experts. And then coming out on the other side alive and well. Right? Truman had a room full of people saying, fuck yes, let's drop the bomb on Japan. And he had one guy saying, please don't. Truman went along. Right or wrong, we can discuss that another time. But there are plenty of opportunities for presidents to buck it. Most times, especially these days, presidents tend to do what the rest of the room is saying. This ageism argument is not really about Biden's age. It is a referendum on the vice president. So he either needs to address this by beefing up his VP. Like, Harris needs to be out. She needs to be out. She needs to be on all the talk shows constantly. Just run it like she's the one running for president, because she needs to prove to the American people that she is capable of taking the reins at a second's notice. And right now, instead, they are protecting her. They are keeping her off the Sunday shows. They are not letting her campaign right now. They're giving her easy jobs to do. They're not putting her out to let her succeed. They are hiding her. Oh, no, don't pay attention to her. It's just Biden, it's ageism. No. They're making a huge mistake. They either need to dump her and get somebody who can do the job, somebody who reaffirms to the American people what we want, that somebody is capable of grabbing those reins and going with it, or they need to dump her, or they need to beef her up. She needs to be out in front. Screw it. The new priority is let's pretend she's running for president and just run it like that. Let's reverse the scenario. I think that would fix it. At least it would show that they're acknowledging the problem. Right now, they're just putting their head in the sand and just saying, oh no, it's ageism. You guys just don't like Biden because he's old. It's ageism. And I'm like, no! I'm acknowledging the reality of the situation. The presidency ages people, okay? Especially if you take it seriously the way Biden does. Trump slept every day till like noon, okay? You can see it on his presidential, like they always have the president's schedule. He had a shit ton of free time and nap time on his schedule. He was sleeping through the presidency most days. Biden is probably one of those guys. He probably only gets about 3 to 4 hours of sleep a night because he takes the job fucking seriously. And that ages you tremendously. Okay? We just had the Marine Commandant have a heart attack because he's only getting about 5 hours of sleep a night trying to do his fucking job. And that man, as a Marine Commandant, you would assume is in good shape and relatively young. Biden, by his very nature that he takes the job seriously, is going to age himself. So he's not just 81 right now. He's probably closer to 85. And he is probably going to be close to fucking 90 in like presidential years, maybe 95 by the time his second term is over. So it's not unrealistic or ageism to question that. They need to beef up Harris or they need to dump her. The sooner the better. Because there is going to be some backlash, right? Especially depending on who he picks. Now, in my perfect world, I think the best person to be vice president right now, or at least to run as the vice presidential ticket, because obviously Harris will finish out the term, would be Pete Buttigieg. He is a true younger version of Biden. He speaks extremely well. Okay? The guy is just a master communicator. You want that. Okay? He would be the perfect complement to Biden. Because that's really what we want, right? Like, nobody's really anti-Biden so much. Like, I've got bitches with him, and I hate some of his policies, and I wish he would have done different things, but I'm not anti-Biden, right? So I don't really want not Biden. There's no other real Democratic candidate who I'd prefer. I mean, in a perfect world, sure, Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren, but they're not running. Sorry, they're not. It's Biden. So my choice is Biden, and I think for him, he should just try to do that. Okay, now that's going to create some backlash. Okay, first off, you are probably going to face some problems with the black community and women because you just dumped a black woman off your ticket. Which is why the sooner the better you get that over with, because there will be backlash. However, unless Harris decides to take it badly and go, I'm going to blow it all up tour, you should be able to get over that pretty easily, I think, especially with someone like Buttigieg, who does speak so well and is able to communicate this pretty good. You will face backlash because you are replacing her with a white man. The best case scenario you could go is say that hopefully the fact that he is gay it softens that a little bit. I get the optics of it, but at the end of the day, here's the thing. Every poll is showing that black Americans are actually looking at Trump a little like, yeah, no, he's not that bad. Crazy as it sounds, that's what the polls show, and that's freaking me out. So Democrats are already losing the black vote. I mean, they still have it, but they're losing points. Kamala Harris isn't going to flip it. I'm sorry. And if it does, again, your problem was never her. Your problem was never that. Okay? If dumping Kamala Harris makes every black American or a majority of black Americans vote Trump, your problem was nothing to do with that. Okay? They really fucking hated you to begin with, and they were tolerating you because of Harris. That even further emphasizes the point that you are the problem, not ageism, not TikTok, not third-party candidates. You guys are just putting your head in the sand. You're setting it all up. It's all TikTok's fault. It's all third party's fault. It's ageism. No, your candidate is weak. You need to address it. I'm not saying he should drop out. I think he's the best bet right now. It's too late for him to drop out. Sorry, it is. Especially considering that it's not like we have a strong bench. Again, Dean Phillips is fucking weak as hell. I'm sorry, he's useless. And Cornel West is not going to be president. Kennedy Jr. is not going to be president. It's not like you've got a strong backbench right now. Biden's the best chance you have. The only way to move forward now is to strengthen him. So, instead of blaming TikTok, you need to listen to the fucking youth. Like, really fucking listen. And address it. Okay? Persuade them, for fuck's sake. Try. Okay? Because right now, you're not even trying. Third-party candidates. Look at why they are polling well. If it's a policy thing, look into it. Listen. Take that issue away from them. Make it so that they don't really have a platform. Because they're like, well, fuck, Biden's actually fixing everything. Ignore the ageism thing. You gotta beef up Harris or dump her. Sooner the better. Just get it over with. Bite that bullet. That's my key to win this thing. Because right now, again, it's not that these are issues. It's that the Democratic Party and President Biden are not addressing them. They're head in the sand on all of these. Instead, they're already playing the blame game. You know, if you have a young American or a poll comes out that shows young Americans are against Biden because of his Israel stance, every time you go into the comment section for one of those, I guarantee you the majority of the things that people think are hot takes are like, oh, stupid libs, I hope you guys love Trump because that's all you're doing. That's all that's happening. They're ignoring them. So, President Biden, if you're listening, which I doubt heavily, and honestly, you should not be listening to me. There are other things to do. But if you're out there, seriously, you're walking into the exact same thing that Hillary Clinton did. The exact same thing. You never addressed the misogyny. You never addressed your record. You never addressed anything. You put your head in the sand, and you were like, it's Trump, baby, I got this one won. Which is why I think 2024 is actually 2016, Part 2, Electric Boogaloo. Thank you very much for watching. Have a great day. Please be safe. Get vaccinated if you can. Wear a mask if you feel it. I understand certain part of the country, it's a little easier than others. Other than that, you guys have a great day, and we'll try again tomorrow.